back again, everyone, to another great episode of Inside Scoop. This is like the Sensormatic. I'm getting to know everyone. It's Sensormatic, and I love it because it's a great group of guys over there and gals. Super knowledgeable team. Have loved our conversation so far. And today I'm here with Craig. And Craig, I'm going to butcher your last name. Help me out. Skzlany.
Skzlany.
Oh, I got it. Great. So, Craig, talk a little bit about what you do at Sensormatic, and then we'll jump into our topic today, which is self-checkout.
Absolutely. I'm literally the general manager of the loss prevention portfolio here at Sensormatic, along with inventory intelligence as well, which is an RFID-based technology. But today we're talking a little bit more about LP and self-checkout. Been with Sensormatic for 35 years, and just happy to be here and share some insights with you.
Great. Well, thanks for coming on. And I know that self-checkout, it's one of the hottest topics right now. It's in the not just LP news, but it's made national news with retailers pulling back on it, making different changes to their self-checkout. What's your take on it? What do you see happening? What are you hearing from your customers right now?
Yeah, I think if you go back just a few years, like back into what we really don't like talking about, this pandemic situation, but I think it drove a kind of a massive accumulation of adoption, right? So there was a lot of adoption that occurred around that, and for a couple of reasons. One is we had probably a reduced labor pool as far as the associates in stores, and so self-checkout became kind of a convenient way to continue to operate the business and not have that reliance. But secondly, I think shoppers really wanted, the expectation back then was to get in and get out quickly, right? As little exposure as possible to the public, all those kind of things. I think some of that stuff has subsided, and so I think that generally there's still a desire for frictionless kind of checkout experiences and for easy in, easy out, quick in, quick out. But yet I think retailers have kind of hit like a plateau where there's a lot of shrink, right? So there's a certain element of shrink that actually comes with self-checkout adoption. Mm-hmm. There's, some retailers are finding that, it's better associate engagement if they continue with the assisted checkout methodology, right? And plan. And so it's a better shopper experience. Others, are even testing just putting limits on self-checkout. So you can't enter a self-checkout unless you got less than 10 items or 5 items or something like that to keep the queuing lines down, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of change going on. And some are literally abandoning the whole thing because they just I think that the shrink that comes with it is quite startling, right? And I think it's something that they back off and want to reevaluate, right?
Yeah, it seems like it's really a mixed bag of what I'm hearing anyway of what the different retailers are trying. And maybe some of this, you mentioned this whole rush to self-checkout during the pandemic. Maybe there was not the appropriate testing done or the appropriate controls put in up front to really make self-checkout flow the way it should. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and I think that's true. I think during the pandemic, I think a lot of things were forced on all of us, right? From a supply chain perspective, you up and down the entire retail, ecosystem, whether it's from manufacturing all the way to the store and the DC supply chain. A lot of things were forced on all of us that couldn't be vetted because we had to implement them so quickly in order to react. We couldn't vet them. And now I think you see some of that, especially in self-checkout. I think you see some of that vetting occurring. Self-checkout's been around for a long, long time, and it's kind of ebbed and flow. It's become popular, and then it kind of wanes off, gets popular again. I think the pandemic really put an exclamation point on it. And so I don't know if retailers are going to, be able to just not embrace it for too much longer, just because it feels like it's become kind of a standard of expectation for a lot of the shopping public, right? But you're right, it's a mixed bag, and none of it was tested, in my opinion, right? Because it was just forced on all of us.
Yeah, I have my own opinions, is I have a lot of opinions on a lot of things for people who know me. But I have my opinions on self checkout. I'm just curious, what kind of shopper are you? Do you use self checkout when you go into the store?
I am when I've got my stuff, I'm looking for the quickest way to get out at that point, right? So if it happens to be self checkout, I'll certainly do it. If it's assisted, I'll do it. I'll go that route. So I don't really have a favorite.
Hmm.
I probably end up walking through the self checkout more than not, right? If I've only got a few items, right?
Hmm.
Um, I'm typically not going to use it for a cart full of product, like if I'm at a Walmart with a grocery cart full of stuff. But I'm probably not as likely to do that. But for the one or two items that I'm going in, coming out, self
Hmm.
checkouts usually where I go, right?
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. Here's my, if anybody could fix this, I just feel weird. I go over there with my two items. This just happened the other day in a home improvement store that I won't name. And there's a guy standing there. He kind of looks at me, doesn't really say hello, and I'm bringing my stuff up. It just feels weird. It feels strange to me. I don't know how we can fix that. Maybe
Yeah,
some better
I agree
service.
with that.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a great reflection because I think one of the things that retailers are doing, which I think is the right thing to do, is you do have some level of assistance or supervision, I should say, in a self checkout area.
Hmm.
It's not like you've got an associate per self checkout uh, element there, but you've got some supervision there. And to your point, I think a lot of times that person probably feels a little awkward because they feel like they're put in a position where they're there obviously to supervise, and you got people that are thinking, well, I don't need supervision. I can do this, right?
Hmm.
And so it is a bit of an awkward situation. But I think in some cases there's folks that just love the assistance actually, right?
Hmm.
So it's a bit mixed bag with that too. I mean, I know self checkout is one of those love it or hate it kind of things. I know people that won't use them, and I know plenty of people that love to use them and expect them, right?
So speaking of, the person supervising, there's lots and lots of ways to secure a self checkout. Are there any best practices that you're seeing from retailers that are like a newer best practice that you're seeing, or we can even talk about technology. I'm sure we'll get to that, but I'm talking about just with the people. Any best practices that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's emerging because we're talking about having an associate, kind of supervise the area, and I think retailers are going to kind of lean towards it's one per three or four self checkout kiosks, right? That kind of thing, and with that, comes efficiency of operation. Like, so shoppers do have a tendency, some just make errors when they're at the self checkout, and that's where some of this loss comes from, right? It's not just about malicious loss. It's like they literally just aren't good at scanning, or they are, maybe they're technology challenged and they can't figure out the sequence of things or whatever. So having that assistant there that's on the ready to lean in, but also having tools that could measure, right, how often whoever it is that's there to supervise or assist is actually engaged, and
Mm-hmm.
how engaged they are with the customers and the shopping customers that are coming through that area. I think is a good measure that can be related to the data around conversion and shrink and all those kind of elements that come with it. If you can measure how well your associates are engaged, you have a better predictor of how effective your self checkout program is going to be, right?
Mm-hmm. For
So I
sure.
think that's a nice best practice because you can optimize how many associates versus by using a little bit of technology to monitor the whole thing and make sure that the activity is actually happening, right?
Right.
So you
Right.
don't end up pouring too many resources into it.
Yeah, for sure. So I happened to see the results of a report that FMI put out where they were talking about, what are the biggest challenges that you know um, food retailers are reporting? What's keeping them up at night? And self checkout was at the top. And I'm thinking that maybe it's there because it seems like a place where we should be able to control that a little bit better, right? we can't really control people being prosecuted. We can't really control some of the things that are going on with ORC, but I think we should be able to control self-checkout a little bit better. What are some things that retailers can do to help make their self-checkouts more secure?
Yeah, and I think what they're doing, what a lot of the successful ones are doing, is they're employing, and utilizing video technology and computer
Right.
vision and AI and that kind of thing, and really analyzing the activity, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
so much about knowing that a bad person enters, but it's more about just understanding what's happening literally at the self checkout, where you've got scanning, you've got different techniques, whether there's a basket, whether there isn't a basket, if people make mistakes and don't even utilize the technology properly. All of those things can be monitored with video
Mm-hmm.
and computer vision, and ensured that, or at least have a better sense that the process is being adhered to, that it's going okay. You can even use it in some cases to help or assist the shopper, right? If
Right.
they do happen to be confused or they can't figure out the technology or the process, that kind of thing, and provide aids and maybe a trigger for an assistant to come and provide more help, right?
Right.
So I think that's like the prime technology for that environment, in my opinion, right? Because I think it can automate things, it can monitor, it could provide a better experience as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of real benefits there.
Yeah, it's a triple threat, I think. It could help you with your internal, it could help with operations and external.
Yeah,
I'm thinking about if there's something about that setup at the self checkout that's not efficient. The AI should be able to help identify that, right? The customers keep making the same mistake over and over again. Let's fix whatever's wrong with that setup.
that's correct. It's perfectly oriented to do that, right? Yeah.
Right. So for those retailers that are kind of taking the extreme reaction, how do you think the complete removal of self checkout is going to affect that customer in store experience?
Yeah, I think, well, I've read a couple articles where there was a backlash, right? And
Mm-hmm.
some negative press from both shoppers and associates, right? Even associates were claiming that it was creating a chaotic environment in the stores, right? Where it was removed.
Okay.
Because the expectation was that it was still there. But I think it probably comes down to how long they've had it and whether it has been reasonably effective, right, at keeping the queues down. Because at the end of the day, I think when shoppers that are using that are expecting, I don't think they're just like looking forward to the fun of scanning things and checking out. I think they're looking for speed and the ability to just have their destiny in their own hands, and out they go, right? And
Mm-hmm.
when so if you've got a successful experience like that, I would imagine if you take it away, there's going to be negative repercussions, because you're going to have the folks that like it that are going to probably not be too happy. And
Mm-hmm.
I've read a few actual articles about that with a couple of retailers where they either took it away or they limited when you could use it, not just by product count, but actually timing. Like there were certain times in the day where they would not allow use of self checkout, and so queues would develop and build up over the assisted checkout lanes. And then you've got people going, well, wait a minute, you've got this over here. Why is it not open? It's all taped off. What's up, right? I
Yeah.
mean, people are demanding right now. I mean,
Oh my
you
gosh.
know, I think they've gotten like significantly more demanding since COVID. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And it,
what they
and
want
it,
when they want it.
it's kind of the upside too of the self checkout, right? Is that it's less because we now have some aggressive customers. Maybe that self checkout will cut down on some of that aggressive interaction. Maybe that's an upside.
Yeah, well, it is. But if you take it away, then you're gonna, you're pushing the aggression, pushing the aggression higher.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. And
I
to your
think
point, if I'm in the store and I see it sitting there and it's not open, that's going to be super aggravating.
correct. And that's what I think is the dilemma, right? Because typically when you take it out, you don't just remove it. You probably, you before you fully remove it, you probably just block it, right?
Mhm.
And that's when, well, the thing is, I've even seen where, associates are expressing frustration that it's been eliminated, removed, or blocked, or not usable, that kind of thing, right? Because it just creates chaos for them to manage with
Mhm.
that aggression that you're talking about, right? And I think they're all worried about that right now, just because safety and security in retail is like a top, that's a top issue, right?
Yeah. And that's sort of human nature too, right? If I've got a line in front of me, I'm going to blame something. I'm going to blame that self checkout not being open over there.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how people operate. But
That's
yeah, I think
right.
it's just easy to blame. And it's like you said, the aggression just keeps increasing. So why make more friction? Let's reduce it.
Right. Right. And
Yeah.
there's a price to pay though. I mean, you put it in and you think it's going to save perhaps on labor and save in some areas. And it just turns out that, it's not going to be that easy, right? You've got to get it pretty well tuned with some technology in order to really feel like you're comfortable, I guess, with it operating, whatever your operating hours are, 24/7 or whatever they happen to be, right? I mean, it's I think it requires inspection though. You got to inspect every once in a while and see how it's going.
Absolutely. Just like
An
anything.
easy thing.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So you mentioned this, but talk a little bit more about. Um, and I saw this in the news. I thought it was crazy. Talk about the item limits that are being placed on the self checkout.
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, my own perception of it is like, okay, so we've got so many people piling up in the self checkout.
Mhm.
And then when you get the items, you go in there with 50 items or more, or 30 or more, or whatever. I mean, you're going to be at that self checkout area for a long time. If you ever, take a look at those kiosks, they're not built for
Yeah.
piling up a bunch of product. So where does it go? It goes back in the cart. Most self checkouts have scales. They've got other things that are associated with making sure that what you bought is what you bought,
Mhm.
right? What you scanned is what you've put on the scale. I just think I think the limits make sense actually. Um, but I
Nice.
know that there are people, they will go through self checkout with everything they got, right,
Yeah.
including a big old carpet that's rolled up, right?
Yeah.
Everything they got.
Well, I guess where I said I think it's kind of crazy is now we're asking someone to come over and intervene. Who's counting those items? That's a person at the self checkout that's doing that, and now they're intervening on a customer.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, I didn't even think
Yeah.
about the whole thing about how do you regulate that, right?
Yeah.
But because now and even if you tried to automate that, you'd be talking about more stuff, right? You'd need
Mhm.
some kind of gating system and everything to that's automatically triggered to keep someone out. I mean, that's going to be interesting if that were the case. So yeah, it presents all kinds of challenges, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No easy answers.
there aren't there
No.
aren't.
So you talked a little bit about AI in the computer vision, and that's helping to identify what's going through the cart. What other technology is happening out there now?
Well, and I think AI as well, because you got AI from an imaging perspective and understanding what's there. And, I think that, what was it, Sam's Club, I think, had that overhead kind of AI contraption, right, that was looking down into the cart. And it was like the receipt checker, only it was video doing that on the exit there. But there's other uses for AI around just the processes that go on in that environment, either the engagement between the associate and the shoppers. Um, is the engagement there? How long is the engagement? If the engagement is there, then what's my result on a daily basis of this self checkout area, right? How productive or unproductive, or how much shrink versus with high engagement versus shrink with low engagement. Those kind of things, I think, are all areas that AI could be beneficial as well, right? So process related stuff.
Right.
Um, just around execution and processing people, processing shoppers, creating a good shopping experience. all those kind of things, I believe it can be used for. It's all a matter of having the video images and being able to train those models to pick that kind of stuff up with accuracy, right? That's the challenge.
It seems to me it's almost more useful in that scenario that you just talked about instead of playing the eye in the sky, right? Because I know there was a lot of negative press about, if something was wrong in a cart, then it alerted the SCO supervisor who came over and sort of confronted that customer or engaged with the customer. Like that created a lot of negative press. I think what you were talking about is less, it's more about the operational piece and the training piece, a little softer.
Right, right, and and I think people's perception would be that it's meant to help them, help
Right.
them execute through as smoothly as possible, right? It's not meant to be a big brother,
Right.
so to speak, right? Which folks get a little paranoid about, and also back to your original comment around how awkward it feels, right? I mean, if you feel like that's what's happening, it's a look over your shoulder kind of thing, it feels a little awkward, right? If it's more about, hey, yeah, I'm just here to help, make this work better, and there's technology actually helping do that as well. It'll keep them out of harm's way. I keep the associates out of harm's way a little bit more, right? And have them in a more, I would say, positive light. Right.
Right. Right. Are there any other, besides AI and the computer vision, any other technologies that you're hearing about, trends?
Yeah, I think, and I think we might have demoed this to you at NRF. I don't remember whether it was this one or last year's NRF, but when you think of most people, when they think of self-checkout, they're thinking of the kiosks. They're, you're the typical self-checkout kiosk you might see at a DIY or at food and grocery, drug, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
We've partnered with somebody where we were providing a self-checkout experience, but it's on the mobile device. So it's on the shopper's mobile device. And there's various applications out there. There's not a lot of them. There's a few, but it presents a real challenge, right? Because once a shopper's enabled to shop on that mobile device, then the question becomes, well, how do I secure stuff? And if I do secure stuff, then how do I enable the shopper to either remove or deactivate or do something with the security measures that are taken there to protect the items, right? So our partnership is with a company called Skzlany out of Denmark, and it's a mobile checkout application, which they've got a self-detaching tag that goes with that application, where the shopper can remove the tag. Right, so it's a Bluetooth enabled tag. The shopper's mobile device, they buy that black shirt that you've got on, and they push the transaction button, and the pin pops out, and off you can remove the tag, put it in the receptacle, and out you can go. So a truly secure mobile checkout experience, right? And that could also be integrated with existing EAS as an example. Where someone might have to still go to take that extra step and go to a self-serve kind of kiosk area in order to remove their tag, if it's a traditional EAS tag. But it would all be integrated and interlocked and authorized and authenticated, that kind of thing. So it'd be a true secure mobile checkout experience, which we think is pretty unique. There's a couple of approaches to this out there, but I think it's a pretty novel way to put the hands to put the power in the hands of the shopper, right?
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and if you think about, like, a really good example is like a stadium apparel store, right? Mm-hmm. Most of your traffic goes through right before the game starts, right? And most people don't want to be stuck in the store waiting in line. They want to be in the stadium, watching the beginning of the game, whether it's a soccer match or whatever it is. And so if they've actually got the ability to transact on their own, right, on the messy jersey that they want to buy or whatever it is, they could just go in, buy it, out the door. They can get to their seat. I think their transactional pull through is going to be a lot higher, right?
Right.
From a store, a retail store at a stadium. So that's a great example of where that capturing the emotion, right?
That's true
Of the
self-checkout, right? You're just
yeah.
literally, yeah, everything's on your own. So in that scenario, how do you make sure that the stuff's paid for? Is there somebody at the door that's looking at an RFID screen? I mean, like, how do you know?
Well, and typically what you do is you enable an associate to enable the shopper.
Okay.
So it's almost like a self-checkout scenario where you've got an associate for checkout kind of thing. You don't have an associate per person, but you've got an associate that's kind of keeping an eye on multiple people.
Okay.
And so that therein lies the risk, of course, right? Because depending on how many people they enable, you got all these people walking around a given shop and doing what they're going to do, and making sure that people are doing the right thing. I think having them protected, though, where if they were going to just leave with something, but it actually had a tag, they're going to have to deal with that, right? So there's still a deterrent there around, you're not going to have authorization to leave with something or remove something unless you buy it, right? If you don't buy it, you're going to be leaving with the tag attached to it,
Right. Right.
right? So you still have that issue, right?
Yeah.
Or at least that security blanket, let's put it that way.
It's super frictionless, though. I mean, if I'm in your
Yeah.
scenario, because I'm a huge football fan, and I do get stuck in this stupid apparel shop right before the game's starting, that'd be
Yeah.
great to zip in and out and not have to worry about any of that. Um, are you guys testing this anywhere? Is this live?
Yeah, we've got it in test in where is it? I'm trying to think. In New York City, there's a store there, and I can't remember what the brand is. I think it's called Reigns, but I have to check on that. But yeah, it's already deployed. It's deployed in many places, but in the U.S., we've just introduced it here.
Okay.
So we're just getting started with setting up pilots and having some customers trial and determine ROIs and all that good stuff, right? But typically it drives higher transaction rates. It's got really nice adoption, right? Where customers, it's not like loyalty where maybe the adoption rate is 5 to 10%. It's almost like 40% of the transaction flow in a given store on a given day might go through this mobile
Wow.
approach. It's pretty amazing when it's truly deployed.
Yeah, and then the customer doesn't have to worry about like, here's some invasive app that I've had to download. It's pretty much just that transaction and done.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. It's a really light, and it's a light integration with the POS and such, and the product files and such from a retailer. So it's pretty quick to deploy. And it's not like a huge process change for the associates in the store either. So it's not super disruptive.
Okay. Interesting.
So
Anything
very cool.
anything else with self-checkout that you're seeing?
Um, well, um, I don't think so. I think, it's kind of interesting right now how, because I know it's ebbed and flowed. When I started my career, believe it or not, way back when with Sensormatic, I actually interviewed with Check Robot, which was a self-checkout concept with a belt, right?
Okay.
And for a food environment. So it's been around for a long, long time, and it's peaked and it's valleyed and peaked and valleyed. Now it's peaked out. I think it's plateaued and kind of softening a little bit, but I don't see it going away. I think that retailers are going to constantly be challenged with making it, pretty quick and easy to get in and get out, right? And I think customers are going to be demanding it from here forward.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
it's with us, right?
Yeah, I would think, maybe this is the time you said sort of plateau. Maybe retailers pull back the lens a little bit, maybe really reevaluate how we've rolled it out and make it better. Maybe there's a even better way to do it than we're doing it. You mentioned the slide function. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's something else. But I think maybe this is the time to really take another hard look at it.
Well, and it's going to be a combination of technologies that make that happen, right? I mean, I think AI will be, central to that, but video, AI, that sort of thing. But it's going to require multiple technologies happening and running, behind the scenes in order to really. I think better for a retailer is going to be set it and forget it. That's the ultimate, and nobody's accomplished that yet.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Nobody has.
No.
Not where they can trust it to that level, right? It's challenging.
Maybe we'll never get there. Who knows? But
Right.
There's got to be a happy medium where people are good. Awesome. All right. Well, this was great. Love talking about self-checkout. I know, like I said, it's a hot topic, and love talking with my friends at Sensormatic. So we're probably going to be continuing more of these conversations. So check us out in a future podcast. And thank you so much for joining me today, Craig. I appreciate the conversation.
You bet, Stephanie. Thank you.